Right now, we are very pleased to welcome Mark Melling, Head of Studio, and Frazer Hurrell, Creative Technologist at RYOT Lab in the UK. And RYOT is a creative studio and an immersive storytelling platform, actually a world leader in AR, VR, and 360 content. They're featured and celebrated at iconic festivals like the Oscars. And their talk is about the opportunities of AR and how brands can use the technology to connect to customers. Welcome.
Lisa, I think that you look the best in that photo. How is everyone? It seems that there's a few people over there, and if you wanted to come here, then we could all just sort of talk to the one place.
I know it's an annoying high school thing to do, but let's do it.
Or in fact, we could just stand on this edge of the stage and
so
talk to you.
Just get started. We're going to talk about augmented reality, being a popular subject today, but specifically how our business does it in relation to brands, the commercial side of the business, how we help brands get into the space, because it's definitely somewhere where people want to be. They're not sure what the entry drug really is yet. So I'm Mark Melling. I'm the head of RYOT Studio for EMEA.
And I'm Frazer. I'm in the labs team under this young man.
We work for a company called Oath. Does everyone here know Oath? Yeah, he used to work for Oath.
Quite good.
That's one person. So we're the digital media arm of the huge telco Verizon. So we represent all of the media brands, 30 plus, 50 plus, something like that, under that umbrella. And specifically what we do is we're part of a thing called RYOT. So we head up RYOT Studio and RYOT Lab. We are the branded content studio for Verizon, and that's both production of content and distribution of that content, all in the name of commercial. We basically work like this. We work with brands, work with agencies, we take on briefs, and before we get into anything AR, VR, linear, any type of storytelling at all, we look at the data. We have a huge B2C proposition through any of our platforms. We find out what the conversations are happening online around a subject that a brand is interested in, and that's when we start with the storytelling. So we brainstorm, we come up with these stories that we're going to help your brand say what they want to say in this space. Then we move into the formats, right? Sometimes it's articles, sometimes it's images, sometimes it's linear video, sometimes it's 360, AR, VR. Most of the time, it's a combination of all of those things, and we distribute that through many, many different channels. We've been very successful at it. You can see both on the content and distribution side, everywhere from the Oscars nominees that we've had, Emmy Award wins, but also Cannes Lions on the advertising side. And we are global, so we have Oath is a global company, Verizon is a global company. RYOT Studio itself has over a dozen offices worldwide. There's a couple of cities up here in blue. That might mean something. They're not in white, but they're in blue. What could that mean? But I'm not ready to talk about that yet. Here's some work that we've done recently, specifically here in Europe.
You might want to turn it up a bit.
So that's us. Just wanted to intro. Maybe you didn't know who we are. Actually, enough about us. We kind of want to know about you guys. What's the split here? Who's here from agency side? Agencies? Yeah. How about publishers? Other publishers? Publishers? Publisher?
Oh.
Yeah,
Advertisers?
Kind of advertisers? Brands?
There's 3.
Cool.
Great.
Russian hackers? Anyone? Got him. Gotcha.
There he is.
Yeah, there he is. Okay, cool. So whatever space you're in, probably thinking about this if you're not already there. Frazer is a verified expert. He's responsible for a lot of that work that we just saw there.
Yeah, so we're here to talk about augmented reality and the strategy that we think you should all have. There's a number of reasons for that. And as advertisers, do you think that you've already got strategies in place around AR? Well, we'll try and tell you the reasons why we think that might be important. Just looking at sort of financials, between 2016 and 2017, it doubled in size to a fairly substantial amount of money here. And if you look at the combination between VR and AR and the whole ecosystem, if you take the money up and it goes well, you could see this kind of figure happening by 2021. And that's both AR and VR. And I mean, talking of VR, has anyone seen Ready Player One? Anybody? What did you think? It's amazing, right? But it's, what it signifies to me is that VR is actually starting to become really mainstream. It's something that people can see in the cinema all the time. Back in London, there's there's a series that we've been watching, and again, that's all focused around this VR. And VR is a fairly big market. There's 83 million devices out there globally, but it really is dwarfed by the amount of devices there are for AR. We're looking at the potential of 3 billion devices being connected and being able to deliver that kind of content. So it really isn't, it's a really huge market there. Now, the thing that's really driven this is technological innovation. And if you don't know, something happened overnight, back a few months back, 6, 7 months, when iOS 11 was pushed to your phone. So if you've got an iOS 11 device, it is now completely AR enabled. And what they did was they made a software update that included a thing called AR Kit. Now, AR Kit allows you to no longer need to have markers to be able to see content. It can just be delivered into the environment and be really, really sticky in that environment. They're not the only people that did it. We've seen AR Core from Google as well, and if you look at the combined reach of that, it's incredible. Okay. Now, Tim, he thinks that this is going to be as impactful as the time when you first got your iPhone and you first went to the App Store. You imagine now not having apps, not being able to do that. He, and as a company, they believe that this is going to be as big as that, which is huge. And it's not just those two. You see Facebook, you see Amazon. Everyone is investing in this space. So there's definitely a market. It's definitely something you need a strategy for. And we're going to try and tell you how we think that might work out. It is a gimmick. Do you think it's a gimmick?
Some people say so.
Some people say so. I mean, I think there has been gimmicks out there.
Nothing wrong with gimmicks. Nothing wrong with gimmicks.
I don't think there's a problem either. If you think about it, like, advertising is quite gimmicky, has been for years. So I'm going to show you a couple of examples which may well fall into that bracket, but I think they work really well. And maybe not so gimmicky. This was something I saw at South by. Now, South by, do you have Cheetos? Do you know what Cheetos are? Everybody? No? Yeah? Well, if you don't know what they are a very Moorish snack. Cheesy, your fingers get covered in yellow stuff, the staple diet for the gaming industry and anyone that's a little bit techie. And so South by is a huge conference out in Texas, in Austin, Texas, that's right. And it's split up into interactive, digital, and gaming. So they targeted the release of their new AR experience directly at that audience. Now, what it is this. So you're able to create content, custom content, through a lens. So you Cheeto the world. Everything's seen through Cheeto's eyes. It's a bit like the sticky stuff on your fingers at the end. But I think it's a nice use, and a bit gimmicky, but I've got a nice use of branding, really being able to get a brand out there. The next one, I think, is great as well. I'll just let this play through. Can we turn it up a bit?
En helt ny bilopplevelse. Å kjøre en Audi Quattro litt morsommere enn å kjøre andre biler. Nå kan du ta med deg denne følelsen inn i din egen stue. Ved hjelp av AR-teknologi kan du skape din egen verden og kjøre hvor som helst. Bygg veier, velg bil og lek deg gjennom alle 4 årstidene. Last ned Quadrocoaster i App Store. Sjekk ut den banebrytende teknologien og prøv selv.
Now, personally, I think everything Audi do are incredible. I mean, they're less of a car company to me, and more of a technology company. They look at innovation all the time. I don't know if you saw anything from last year in Cannes, but there was a VR piece, the Sandbox VR, where you could literally shape a track and then get inside a VR car and drive around that track. It was absolutely fantastic. And I think what they've done here really nicely is actually just reimagine the commercial, putting you inside it, allowing you to sort of play, interact with it. So I think, although it could be seen as a bit gimmicky, it's a good use of the technology. So what's?
So, I mean, and those are examples that kind of solidify the view that that some of this stuff is gimmicky. But gimmicky advertising is nothing new. But those who are entering into that market are kind of saying, okay, well, I want something that gets attention, but has utility and scales. That's really the golden grail of what everyone is looking for in this space. So if you want to invest in this, this is the method. You've seen those examples that we've before that we start with, okay? And it's all about connecting the physical aspect of advertising with what we're doing now with digital, looking at what we're missing between those two mediums and using AR to connect the dots. 3 examples of brands that we've found through studies, separate things that we've not done, but we've seen in the industry as leaders, are IKEA, L'Oreal, and Dulux. And when you look at the success that these brands have had in AR, there is a very valid connection. And it simply is the fact that these are brands that have suffered due to digital ingenuity. That their glory days were actually on the high street, through retail, through physical marketing. And when digital came in, there was an opportunity, but it challenged their physical business. And they've used technology to connect the two. So let's start with IKEA.
Is that how you say it here?
IKEA?
IKEA?
IKEA.
How do you say it?
That's how I say it. How do you say it? IKEA?
IKEA.
One of their biggest successes was opening up its doors to people to come inside and experience their products. You walk into IKEA, and it's like walking into people's living rooms. You're having a peek into other people's kitchens. You can start imagining, well, actually, my space is that size. I could do that exactly with that space. And you walk through and you do this. Even if you're there for a light bulb, you go for the experience. You walk through the whole thing. You get your hot dog, or you get your meatballs. Very controversial, hot dog or meat. How many hot dogs? How many hot dogs do we have over there? Yes, the hot dog. That's right. But that's the whole experience, and that's what IKEA did for the brand. They let people feel the brand. They let people experience it. Very important, because if anyone knows anything about communications, or they've studied communications, they know about this man and his cone of experience. And the simple fact that when you're messaging, what he found that messages that are read, remembered by 10%. Heard, we remember 20%. Seeing, we remember 30%. But experiencing, eureka, 80% of messaging is retained. So that's the beauty of how IKEA changed their strategy. They were a very physically based strategy. Digital took them into a space that was actually quite uncomfortable, where they were competing where there was no tangible assets. They were competing on price. They were competing on images. So what they did was they brought the experience into people's living rooms. The ability to take their furniture, and instead of looking into other people's living rooms with your ideas, you can bring that furniture into your living room. Secondly, L'Oreal. You cannot get a more physical brand than L'Oreal. Literally, you put on their product to make yourself look different. Typically, this is how they marketed to people. They let them into their stores, they let them into department stores to physically try on the product. And now, with digital, they've gone into a place where they're competing, where no one's trying on anything. How can they differentiate quality? How can they allow people to experience the L'Oreal brand? Yes. Now they're taking that technology and they're scaling it further. So if you nix this argument that this doesn't scale, they're bringing it into mirrors, they're bringing it into shop windows. Brings me to my next point, which is Dulux. So anyone who's done any DIY, painting, anything like that, knows the challenges of finding the right colors for your rooms, for your walls. Paint samples are nothing new. Go to the store, get 5 or 6, bring them back, look at the walls, argue with your wife, and then choose the paint. Maybe you have to go back to the store again. With digital, again, a challenge. They're not competing on the color itself. You can't take your computer and put it up against the wall. So what they've done is they've developed this app. I encourage anyone who's doing any painting to download it. It's amazing. But the point behind this is that with the argument that this stuff doesn't scale, this has replaced Dulux's most tried and true traditional method of marketing and surpassed it. This not only scales in terms of saving time, but also in efficiency, and frankly, the number of paint samples that people can use on a given project. Examples of what other people are doing, but this is how we approach with our clients at RYOT Studio.
Yeah, so I'm going to take you through some actual examples of how we've helped brands, and we've used AR in that sense. So Paramount, one of the most iconic picture houses out there, that they make incredible films, and they used to exclusively market using physical marketing, the billboard. Pictures like this are now iconic, classic pieces of art that people go and spend money for the original to hang on their wall. So they contacted us and asked us about their new film for Mother. It's the Darren Aronofsky film, and it's an art house film. And in fact, they had an incredible piece of art, hand-painted, beautiful piece. So we looked, across our network, and we were looking to sort of hear. I don't know if we used some tools that allow us, as Mark said at the very beginning, to be able to listen for the intent on the, throughout our audience. And a lot of the Tumblr audience were really talking about this piece of art. We actually engaged a guy called Insa. He does a thing called Gifffiti. So he makes GIFs out of graffiti. This is how it turned out. So that's a 30-foot piece of art. I think it took something like 100 cans of paint, and he painted 24 frames of animation to bring that back to life. We didn't have a big enough place to put it, so we hired a landmark, and we allowed people to experience it through AR. Now this was, the footfall there on the day was probably a couple of thousand. It wasn't about that. It was about creating a piece of content that we could then put onto our system and distribute at scale. I mean, we saw something like 50 million impressions of video views across the 9 markets that it ran in. So a really successful campaign, a really successful way of marketing using AR, but really just connecting the bricks and mortar again and bringing that physical and digital to life. The next one is a partnership that we have with Time Life. Now, they have a number of different magazines, And anyone old enough to have been in print before they got into digital? Right. Well, you shouldn't be here, right? No, I'm joking. So it's been a challenge as for that industry, and for the reason that people go and watch digitally. So we thought that we would try and help them to reimagine what we could do with the front cover. We've done this for a number of different brands, but looking at Time as probably the lead of that. So we were very fortunate that they were working. They actually had the first guest editor in the 94 years of the magazine, and it was Bill Gates. So we were really lucky enough to make some content with Bill, and this is what it looked like.
This is Mohammed Nasir. He's 5 years old and lives in Ethiopia. I first met Mohammed when he was 2 weeks old in 2012. He was born at a time when healthcare services in Ethiopia had improved dramatically. But what if he'd been born a few years earlier? In 1990, Ethiopia had one of the highest rates of child mortality in the world. 1 in 5 children was dying.
And there was, if I go on to the next one as well, there was other content that was throughout the magazine. We had something from Bono. We had another piece where there was
So we're pretty sure this is the first time.
But you can see how we'd integrated the digital and the physical, and to really enhance it. Now, earlier, the IKEA example, it's a great utility, and as Mark said, finding that kind of use is really important. But one of the blockers for that is that you need to have downloaded the app, and you need to have gone through the process of finding that content. So at the labs, we were looking at ways of trying to mitigate that, and we've worked on a project to actually take some of our applications that we can advertise within and actually create advertising that is AR-enabled. So that kind of utility where you want to see a product in a place. And this was the first test we did for Home Depot in the US. As you can see, you're in the Mail app. There's an ad at the top, which is called the Pencil ad. You can buy that programmatically. It takes you through to an experience where you get to actually place that content directly in the room you're in and experience what it is and how it would look. So in this case, it was a Christmas tree. We made it so that it was kind of interactive. You could make the size you want. You could click on it to add some extra bits and pieces. You could add some ornaments. You could even make it snow. And then what the kicker for this is that you can actually go and buy that product. You can click on a button and go out there and experience it. Like I say, there's no friction. You're in the Mail app. You don't have to download anything. You see an ad. You go to the experience. You have that experience with the brand in AR, and then you can buy it. So how successful was it? It was incredible. Over 2 minutes of people playing with the actual AR. And then after that, there were people going through and spending 3 minutes actually browsing and shopping. So it seems that it's a very effective case study, higher click-through rates, etc. We're just starting to move this into other areas, and we're going to be opening up new applications over time, so the scale will increase dramatically. So that's some examples of how we've connected the digital and the physical.
All right, so the point of this, again, to reiterate, is we can't tell you exactly how to use AR in whatever industry you're in, whatever marketing campaign you want to look at, but we can tell you how it is that we work in this space. So whenever in brainstorming on any challenge, on any campaign that you have, this is what we do, and it's take it or leave it, a piece of advice we can give you. Always start with what's the insight, right? What's the data that we have? What's the problem we're looking to solve? And then create the story. Do not start with augmented reality. It's never going to work if you do it that way. But once you have those ideas, do a brainstorm with a group of people. Just imagine, digital doesn't exist. It's the glory days. It's 1990. We're making money hand over fist. And imagine this strategy has zero digital in it whatsoever. Do the same thing with real life today. Create a strategy that involves digital. Compare the two. Look at both. What are the gaps in both of these strategies? And then brainstorm around if technology, if AR can help to close those gaps. Guys, thank you very much for your time, Frazer and I definitely enjoyed it in this beautiful city. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Cheers.